Hey guys, so as many of you know, the 25th anniversary of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace is upon us. I'm actually planning on seeing this sometime tomorrow night at the local theater where it all started off for me, where I'm at here, growing up all these years. It's very sentimental looking back on it. It's hard to really believe it's been 25 years since Episode 1 was out. I don't think any of us really like being reminded that we're getting older, and this kind of makes me feel like that in a way. I was 11 years old when this film originally came out, so it really feels weird in a lot of ways because, you know, I was finishing fifth grade at the time, May of 1999, when this came out, and while I don't necessarily consider Episode 1, looking back on it years later, as being one of the best Star Wars films ever made, it is very sentimental. And I think the one thing that the majority of us major Star Wars fans can agree on, the prequels at least had a very cohesive story that, while I do still enjoy the sequels, I think most of us can all agree that sequel trilogy just didn't really achieve a cohesive story from beginning to end, whereas the prequels did have a clear direction. Now, whether you want to argue that the execution maybe could have been better, the dialogue and directing could have been stronger, and maybe Lucas could have scaled back some of the over usage of CGI, and there's a lot of things we can nitpick, obviously, looking through episodes 1 through 3 that could have been much stronger. But one thing you can't deny is that it did tell a very cohesive story about the rise of Anakin Skywalker, and obviously his fall to the dark side, and how he went from being a very promising young Jedi to becoming, the big bad of the galaxy. Ultimately becoming, one of the greatest screen villains in cinematic history. And Episode 1 is a great introduction to that. Obviously there's a lot of flaws. I look back on it, it's kind of funny almost now how a lot of things have actually been very embraced, looking back on it, where a lot of casual moviegoers and Star Wars fans have really warmed up even more to the prequels over the years. And I remember, I was never really actually a big Star Wars fan when I was a little kid, and Episode 1, again, even though I don't consider it to necessarily be one of the very best Star Wars films, even though I enjoy them all, but I'm one of those fans that I do consider some of the films to be greater than others, even though I can watch them all and still be very entertained. But Episode 1, strangely enough, is the Star Wars film that is responsible for making me a major Star Wars fan. And it's very interesting to think about, because I remember growing up in a house where not only did we have the old laser disc of the original trilogy, but we had a few different box sets over the years of the original trilogy on VHS. And I remember they would be played quite often, from A New Hope to The Empire Strikes Back to Return of the Jedi. And as a kid, and maybe at the time of, maybe 5-6 years old, they never really personally interested me per se. But looking back on it now, it's amazing how I was finishing fifth grade, May of 99, and for whatever reason, Phantom Menace really captured my imagination and attention. The more I was seeing more and more, publicity for it, and, a lot of marketing everywhere, from, books to action figures and, various things coming out. And it just kind of really made me a huge fan. I remember really being a major fan of Darth Maul, and just thinking, that duel, seeing it for the first time between Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Darth Maul, was the greatest thing I had ever seen at that point of my life, on the big screen. And to this day, I think that saber duel is still pure magic. The pod race too was breathtaking. I just can't even imagine, the feelings that are gonna swell up, when I watch this again on the big screen, first time in 25 years, as it will for countless other Star Wars fans too. It no doubt will be a very, very emotional experience. Something that is really going to really have a very visceral effect on us, a very, very emotional effect, no doubt. But it's very interesting to see how, for me personally at least, growing up in that era, how at the time, I can recall a time when the prequels were very much hated by a lot of Star Wars fans and a lot of casual moviegoers and critics at the time who absolutely hated Jar Jar Binks and, hated that character, hated the way he spoke and how he almost came across more like a Looney Tunes cartoon character and made Star Wars almost a little bit too kid-friendly. I remember the character receiving a lot of backlash and hate at the time. A lot of people hated Jake Lloyd as a child actor too, playing a child Anakin Skywalker, and just, the over usage of CGI and bad dialogue, I think was a huge point of reference. How a lot of people felt like the film itself just didn't really feel enough like Star Wars. There, for most, I remember at the time that the complaint was of my generation, with a lot of kids coming up, a lot of older adults too. At the time, there wasn't really enough characters that you really loved per se, like, Luke Skywalker or Princess Leia or Han Solo or, Lando Calrissian, or, it lacked the extra magic and wonder for many, for sure, at the time. But, looking back on it, I feel like these films, the scope and scale of those stories, depicted before the original trilogy, was almost impossible at the time, I think, to really tell effectively the way many of us fans would have liked. But I think George Lucas still did the best job he could. Obviously, dialogue could have been much better. Acting could have been much stronger by certain characters and actors. Perhaps he should have used more models, more miniatures and puppets, to really give it more of that practical, lived-in kind of effect that the originals had, where, less was more. But, I've always personally been a bigger original trilogy fan. I think I've grown to appreciate the originals more, I would say, post Revenge of the Sith, because I remember at the time, even in '05 when Sith was out, that film was almost like the second coming for me. It was on a completely different level, and I remember loving it so much that I actually ranked Episode 3 probably as my second favorite Star Wars film of all time. But over the years, as much as I love them all, I do consider some to be better than others, and none of the prequels, for me personally, even though I can rewatch them all the time at home, I personally wouldn't really put them in my top 5 or top 3, of all Star Wars films ever made. But I do enjoy them. They are a part of my generation, a part of my childhood growing up, going from finishing elementary school and then through middle school and into high school. So, I mean, they obviously represent a lot. I can't even imagine the emotional feeling I'm going to get in 2027 with Attack of the Clones 25th anniversary, and 2030 with Revenge of the Sith when that's released. That's going to be incredibly emotional. But, for now, we're just going to concentrate on the present with the 25th anniversary of The Phantom Menace. And I think it's going to definitely bring up a lot of visceral emotions. It's going to be a very emotional experience for me personally. Maybe not necessarily for every Star Wars fan, but I think it's really gonna do something very emotional for me personally. And it's just, I expect it to be something that's really gonna just blow my mind in terms of, where did the past 25 years go? Because like many since then who may have been around my age or, older or younger, who, first saw this at the time. I'm sure a lot of things have changed in their life too. I've gone through a whole lot. I'm very much, I feel, still the same person I was as a kid, but I've been through a whole lot over the years. Obviously, I've had a lot of loved ones that have come and gone over the years. Had quite a few broken hearts, like pretty much anybody, over the years growing up. There's been a lot of stuff that's happened since 1999, so it's going to bring up a lot of emotions, and it's probably going to really trigger a lot of images in my head of, that experience of seeing it for the first time, because I saw it 3 times that year. I recall seeing it once at the regular theaters, May of '99. I saw it at the cheap seats, which was what they considered the low budget theater, back in the day. I think a few months later, maybe, I want to say maybe around September, October of that year. And then it got re-released December of '99, I remember briefly. And I saw that at the time with my dad for the last time, the third occasion. And that was very deep, so it's gonna be an experience. And to actually be able to see this at the very same theater that I grew up, seeing this at when I was 11, tomorrow night is going to be a very, very deep emotional experience. So, again, I'll give my out of theater reaction of what it felt like, coming back to that theater and being able to see this on the big screen after all these years. But I'd like to hear in the comments below, what you guys think. Are you very much looking forward to this? Is it just kind of, it doesn't really have maybe much meaning for you personally? If, either way, that's okay. We as Star Wars fans, we all have different viewpoints. We're all maybe moved emotionally by different Star Wars films more than others sometimes. And, it's fine too. It's what makes us all unique as fans. But let me know in the comments below what your guys' thoughts are. Are you going to be seeing this too? If not tomorrow, but maybe sometime this weekend too, for the 25th anniversary. And what are your overall thoughts? I'd love to hear it. But for now, I'll leave it at that. And again, if you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll have a quick out of theater reaction tomorrow evening. So bye for now. Thanks for watching.